My name is Camilla Gibson, and at 28, I thought I'd seen enough workplace discrimination to handle anything. I was wrong. What happened at Riverside Luxury Apartments would test every ounce of patience I possessed, and ultimately lead to the most satisfying moment of professional revenge I've ever experienced. It started innocently enough. I needed a place to stay while my penthouse underwent renovations. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd be renting in my own building, but I wanted to experience what my tenants went through firsthand. I walked into the leasing office on a Tuesday morning, dressed casually in jeans and a simple sweater. Behind the mahogany desk sat Patricia Henley, the property manager I'd hired 6 months earlier based on glowing references. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer suit screamed authority, but her smile faltered the moment she looked me up and down. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone already dismissive. I explained I was interested in renting a one-bedroom unit. Patricia's eyebrows rose skeptically as she glanced at my appearance again, clearly making assumptions about my financial capabilities. "Our units start at $3,000 monthly," Patricia said, emphasizing each word as if I couldn't possibly afford such luxury. "Plus first month, last month, and security deposit. That's $9,000 up front." She leaned back in her leather chair, arms crossed, waiting for me to admit defeat. Instead, I pulled out my checkbook. "That's fine. When can I see available units?" Her mouth actually fell open slightly. She recovered quickly, but I caught the flash of annoyance in her eyes. Clearly, she'd expected me to retreat, tail between my legs, intimidated by the financial requirements. Patricia grudgingly showed me 3 units, each tour accompanied by passive-aggressive comments about maintaining community standards and ensuring tenants fit the building's prestigious atmosphere. In the elevator, she mentioned how previous applicants had been more suitable for the building's clientele. When I asked what made someone suitable, she smiled tightly. Professional appearance, stable employment, references from previous luxury accommodations. Her implication was crystal clear. I didn't meet her arbitrary standards. Despite her obvious reluctance, I completed the application and wrote the check on the spot. The discrimination became systematic over the following weeks. My application, which should have taken 3 business days to process, languished for 2 weeks. Patricia claimed they were conducting thorough background checks and verifying my employment. When I called for updates, she was always too busy to speak with me or would promise callbacks that never came. Meanwhile, I watched from my temporary hotel as other prospective tenants, all impeccably dressed professionals, toured units and moved in within days. The double standard was glaring and infuriating. After 3 weeks of runaround, Patricia finally called with concerns about my application. Sitting in her office again, she shuffled papers dramatically before delivering her verdict. "While your credit score is adequate, we have questions about employment stability. Your listed occupation as consultant is rather vague." She peered over her reading glasses condescendingly. "We prefer tenants with traditional corporate positions, lawyers, doctors, executives. People who understand the responsibility of living in a prestigious property like Riverside." Her words dripped with elitist assumptions about who deserved luxury housing. I maintained my composure, asking what additional documentation she needed. Patricia's smile was predatory as she slid a paper across her desk. "We'll need 3 months of bank statements, 2 professional references from Fortune 500 companies, and a cosigner with verifiable assets exceeding $500,000. These requirements were nowhere in the standard lease agreement. She was making them up specifically for me. Of course, if these requirements seem challenging, there are other properties in the area that might be more suitable for your situation. Her suggestion was clearly code for cheaper, less prestigious buildings. And over the next month, I provided every document Patricia requested, plus additional ones she invented along the way. Tax returns, employment verification letters, character references, each submission met with new obstacles. She questioned my consulting income's legitimacy, suggesting it seemed sporadic and unreliable. When I provided client contracts proving steady work, she worried about future income stability. Patricia was clearly determined to deny my application, regardless of my qualifications. Her bias was so obvious that other staff members began exchanging uncomfortable glances during our interactions. The breaking point came during my 6th visit to the leasing office. Patricia kept me waiting 45 minutes before seeing me, despite having scheduled the appointment. When I finally sat across from her desk, she wore a triumphant expression that made my stomach clench. "After extensive review, we've decided not to approve your application," she announced, clearly savoring the moment. Riverside luxury apartments maintain strict standards, and we don't feel you'd be a good fit for our community. Her reasoning was thin at best. Suddenly, my excellent credit wasn't enough. My income was questionable, and my references were insufficient. I asked for specific reasons in writing, which visibly annoyed Patricia. "That won't be necessary," she replied curtly. "Our decision is final. Perhaps you should consider properties more aligned with your circumstances." The word circumstances hung in the air like an insult. She stood up, clearly expecting me to leave quietly. Instead, I remained seated, pulling out my phone. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," I said calmly. Patricia's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "I am the supervisor. I report directly to ownership, and they trust my judgment completely regarding tenant selection." That evening, I made several phone calls. The first was to my attorney, detailing the months of discrimination I'd endured. The second was to my accountant, requesting documentation I'd need for the following day. The third was to building security, arranging a meeting in the main conference room for the next afternoon. Patricia had no idea that her ownership, she claimed supported her decisions, was about to walk through her door. For 6 months, I'd allowed her to run the property with minimal oversight, trusting her expertise. That trust had been catastrophically misplaced. Thursday morning arrived with crisp autumn air that matched my determined mood. I dressed carefully, tailored black suit, professional makeup, hair styled in a sleek chignon. The contrast to my previous casual appearances was striking and intentional. I wanted Patricia to see exactly who she'd been discriminating against. My heels clicked confidently across the marble lobby as I walked past confused desk staff toward the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see Patricia already seated at the head of the polished table, looking smugly confident about whatever meeting she thought she was attending. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as I entered the conference room, followed by my attorney, James Morrison, and head of building security, Marcus Webb. "Excuse me, this is a private meeting," she stammered, rising from her chair. "Security, please escort this woman out. She's been harassing staff about a rental application we already denied." Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding." Patricia's face reddened as she looked between us, clearly frustrated that security wasn't immediately following her orders. The power dynamic she was accustomed to controlling was shifting beneath her feet. "Please sit down, Patricia," I said quietly, taking the seat at the opposite end of the table. "We need to discuss your management of this property." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "I don't know who you think you are, but you have no authority here. I'm calling the police to have you removed for trespassing." She reached for her phone, but James Morrison's voice stopped her cold. "Ms. Henley, I'm James Morrison, representing Ms. Gibson. Before you make that call, you should know that my client owns this building." Patricia's hand froze mid-reach. The color drained from her face as she slowly looked back at me. "That's impossible," Patricia whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I opened the folder James had prepared, sliding documents across the polished table. Property deeds, tax records, corporate filings, all bearing my name as sole owner of Riverside Luxury Apartments. "I purchased this building 2 years ago as an investment property," I explained calmly. "I hired you 6 months ago to manage it professionally and fairly. Instead, you've been discriminating against potential tenants based on your personal biases." Patricia stared at the documents, her hands trembling slightly as she recognized the official seals and signatures. "I don't understand," Patricia stammered, looking desperately around the room for support that wasn't coming. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" I leaned forward slightly, maintaining eye contact, "because I wanted to see how you treated people you perceived as beneath your standards. A property manager who discriminates based on appearance or occupation isn't someone I can trust with my investment." The weight of her situation was clearly settling in. She'd spent months insulting and rejecting her own boss. Her face cycled through emotions: shock, embarrassment, fear, and finally, calculating desperation. Marcus Webb cleared his throat again, clearly uncomfortable witnessing his supervisor's downfall. "Ma'am, should I escort Miss Henley out?" Patricia's head snapped toward him, panic flashing in her eyes. "Marcus, you can't be serious. This is obviously some kind of scam. Check those documents. They're probably fake." But even as she spoke, her voice carried no conviction. The evidence was overwhelming, and she knew it. James Morrison had prepared thoroughly, bringing not just ownership documents, but also records of every interaction between Patricia and me, including recorded phone conversations where her discriminatory behavior was clearly documented. "The documents are authentic," James confirmed, his legal authority adding weight to the moment. "Furthermore, Miss Gibson's treatment violates both state and federal fair housing laws. We have documented evidence of discriminatory practices based on appearance, occupation, and perceived economic status." Patricia's face went ashen. She understood the legal implications. Discrimination lawsuits could destroy her career permanently. Her breathing became shallow as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. The woman she'd spent months dismissing and insulting wasn't just her boss, but someone with the power to end her professional life completely. I stood slowly, my movement commanding attention in the suddenly quiet room. "Patricia, your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings." My voice remained calm, professional, despite the satisfaction I felt. "Your final paycheck will be mailed after deducting costs for reprocessing applications you inappropriately denied. We'll also be reviewing all lease decisions you made during your tenure here." Patricia finally found her voice, desperation making it shrill. "Please, Miss Gibson, I made a mistake. I can change. I can do better. I need this job. I have a mortgage, car payments, ... You should have considered those responsibilities before deciding to discriminate against people," I replied firmly. "Your behavior reflects poorly on this property and violates everything I expect from management staff." Patricia tried one last manipulation, switching tactics to anger. "This is entrapment. You deliberately deceive me, setting me up to fail." James Morrison stepped forward. "Miss Henley, testing for discrimination through legitimate applications is perfectly legal. My client applied honestly for housing in her own building. Your response revealed your true character." Patricia's shoulders sagged as she realized no argument would save her position. Security efficiently escorted Patricia from the building, while other staff members watched in stunned silence. Word spread quickly through the property about what had happened. Within hours, the entire building knew their previous manager had been fired for discriminating against the actual owner. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Patricia's elitist attitude had cost her everything she'd tried to protect. I spent the remainder of the day meeting with remaining staff, reassuring them about job security while establishing new policies to prevent future discrimination. The following weeks brought sweet vindication as news of Patricia's downfall spread through the property management community. Her reputation was destroyed. No reputable company would hire someone who discriminated against their own building's owner. I hired Maria Santos, a fair and experienced manager who treated every applicant with respect regardless of appearance or background. Under her leadership, the building's atmosphere transformed from elitist exclusivity to professional inclusivity. Occupancy rates increased as word spread about our fair treatment policies. 2 months later, I received a letter from Patricia begging for a reference or recommendation. She'd been unemployed since her termination, unable to find work in property management. Her carefully constructed career had crumbled because she couldn't see past her own prejudices. I didn't respond to her letter. Actions have consequences, and discrimination deserves no mercy. The woman who'd spent months making me feel unwelcome in my own building had learned the hardest possible lesson about judging people by appearances. The renovations on my penthouse completed shortly after, but I kept the one-bedroom unit as a reminder of this experience. Sometimes I stay there when working late, remembering how it felt to be dismissed and underestimated by someone I'd trusted. The experience taught me valuable lessons about oversight and the importance of truly knowing the character of people I employ. Patricia's discrimination didn't just cost her a job, it cost her entire career, serving as a permanent reminder that treating people poorly inevitably backfires.